when you meet with somebody, when you say hi with somebody, many of you have heard it already this morning. I've heard this response, by the way, about 15 times already. And you ask someone, you say, hey, how's it going? What do they say? Good, fine, and then just busy, tired. Somebody said it over here. I'm good, I'm tired. Have you noticed that we seem like a really tired people? I saw this thing, I don't know if it was on Facebook or on the internet, wherever it was, but anyways, it was two kids talking, and one of them was saying that I've learned that being an adult just means telling other adults how tired you are. And I read that, and I'm thinking, that's so true. And then we get this thought process, and we think, well, I'm tired now, but when this happens, fill in the blank with whatever, when I finish college, when I get married, when my kids move out, when I retire, when I whatever, then I'll have more time and I'll be less busy. Is any of that true? No, not. I've fallen into a few of those traps myself, and I've been warned by folks, be encouraged, it gets worse. We are tired. And why is it that we are so tired? Why is it that it seems like our lives, our day-to-day lives seem like, ooh, I just need to get through to today. Once I get through today, then I'll be fine. You see, we start off the day and we have some of these big ideas and we say, today I really need to start eating healthy. Or today I really need to start praying. I really need to start that Bible reading plan. Today I need to reach out to my friend. I need to reach out to my mom. I haven't talked to her in a few days, whatever it is. But then we go through our day, and our day gets so consumed with going from one thing to the next that we miss it. You see, in our life, it looks like this. We get up in the morning, and I go running. I know, people ask me, what am I running from? Well, I'm trying to run to my sanity. That's where it comes from, okay? I run in the morning, go home, shower, and then we're getting kids ready. We get them to school. We work throughout the day. And then pick them up from school and come home, and we begin this. Usually it's about a 2-hour, we could call it a dance. Chaos might be a better phrase for it, of cycling kids through, helping with homework and showering. We got 6 kids in one shower. We got to start early. Otherwise, yeah, you got it. We shower, get dinner figured out, picking up kids from practices, taking them to practices, whatever it looks like. Usually our evenings go by in a blur. And then right around 7:30, 8:30, we start sending kids to bed. And by the end of that, I'm exhausted. And I get these great ideas. I say, well, I didn't get my work done, but I tell you what, after kids go to bed, I'll get my computer out and I'll knock out a couple hours. It hasn't happened yet. Just because mentally I'm drained. Now, your world, your day, it might look a little different. But the big parts of it are all the same. We move from one thing to the next to the next. We work. We want to spend time with our families. We want to spend time with our hobbies. We want to travel. We want to interact with people. And then at the end of the day, we go to bed and we realize, well, I wanted to start eating healthy today, but I'll start that tomorrow. I wanted to start praying today, but I'll pray tomorrow. I wanted to start my Bible reading plan today, but I'll start it tomorrow. I wanted to call that person today and see how they're doing, seeing how they're recovering, but I'll do that tomorrow. We get so consumed with all the little day-to-day stuff that we miss the big pictures of what's going on in our lives. Is that resonating with you? Do you feel that? We find ourselves driven, and this is what is driving us to this. It's driven by desire. And there's nothing wrong with desire. Desire is a good thing. We desire to eat, so we get up and go to work. That's a good thing. We desire good friendships and good relationships, so we invest in those, and we call people, and we spend time together. That's a good thing. But where desire goes wrong is when it consumes us, when it takes over control of our lives. Because the thing about desire, it's never fulfilled. It's never satisfied. The writer of Ecclesiastes, this was thousands of years ago, he makes this observation. He says, the eye is never satisfied with seeing, nor the ear with hearing. It's never satisfied. Then a little bit later, he says, those who love money will not be satisfied with money. just as those who love wealth will not be satisfied with their income. And he makes this statement, this is vanity, to try to fulfill these desires here and now. A couple hundred years ago, a tycoon by the name of John Rockefeller, who owned approximately 1% of all wealth in America. Now we're thinking 1%, that's next to nothing. It's of America, was owned by one man. And when he was asked, how much money do you want? How much do you need? A little bit more. He wasn't satisfied. A more contemporary philosopher put it like this. He says, I can't get no satisfaction. You don't want me to sing it. We're trying to build a church here. I'm not going to sing it. And so, our desires cannot be satisfied, though we pursue them with all of our might. And you know what's interesting? Advertising companies know this. They know that we all have this desire, this longing for satisfaction, for fulfillment, and they try to sell it to us. Have you seen these commercials? Especially my favorite ones are commercials for perfume or cologne. Have you seen those? It starts with the guy, and it's all shaded and everything, and he's going to a restaurant, and he's enjoying it, and then there's usually a date that comes in as well. And you're thinking, what in the world is this about? And then it fades away to buy this cologne. I'm thinking, oh, so I can enjoy my life if I only had that $19.99 or $25, I don't know how much it costs, but this bottle of cologne. You see it elsewhere. You see it when they advertise vacation homes. You see it when they advertise soda. If we buy this soda, then our family will gather around the table and we'll have peace and we'll have dinner together. They see the longing within our souls for peace, for rest, for fulfillment. And they say, I'll sell it to you for 3 easy payments. And what's interesting, you want to see people that know human nature? Look at advertising. Billions of dollars have been spent to learn human nature. When they say those things, we talk about it, we think, oh, that's ridiculous. Why would we even do that? We do. People see that. We see those advertisements, and then we think, oh, I'll be happy when I have whatever it is. And so we go back to work, and maybe we even work a little bit extra. Or maybe we skip out on paying something else. Or maybe we just take out a credit card, take out a loan in order to buy whatever it is so that we can be happy. But then when we buy it, we realize this ain't it. Satisfaction and desire are not here. Why is our desire so strong? Because God made us that way. God designed us to have this infinite, this seemingly infinite level of desire, and He did that on purpose. He did that because He wants us to desire that which is the greatest in this universe, which is Him. And whenever we pursue anything else to fulfill our desires, they fall far, far short. An old African theologian, St. Augustine, he wrote like this in the 4th century. He wrote this prayer and he says, Lord, our hearts are set on you. He says, our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you. He's making this observation some 1700 years ago, that our hearts, our very being is restless until we find our rest in God. When we have this infinite desire, and when we have our finite human experiences, we're not going to experience everything there is to experience. We're not going to have all the money in the world. We're not going to travel everywhere in the world. We're not going to meet everybody. Our experience is finite. Someone once put it like this. They said that our lives reflect unfinished symphonies. I thought, wow, that's beautiful. Everybody's living a symphony, but they're all unfinished. Our finite experience with our infinite desire produces restlessness. This stirring within ourselves to say there has to be something more. But I can't find what that more is. There has to be rest for my soul. But I don't even have time to think about rest. Sometimes people put it like this. They say, I'll rest when I'm dead. Or, have you heard of this one? They say, why should I rest? The devil doesn't take a day off. Well, first of all, he's the devil. Don't emulate him. Don't let him decide your behavior patterns. That's not a good idea. And second of all, as the preachers of old used to say, I've read the end of the book. It doesn't work out well for him. We don't follow him. There has to be a rest for our souls. There's a book written entitled The Subversive Sabbath, written by A.J. Sabota. And he writes this: our 24/7 culture conveniently provides every good and service we want, when we want, how we want. Our time-saving devices, technological conveniences, and cheap mobility have seemingly made life much easier and interconnected. As a result, we have more information at our fingertips than anyone in history. You realize you have more here than what they had to put the first man on the moon. Yet, with all this progress, we are ominously dissatisfied. In bowing at these sacred altars of hyperactivity, progress, and technological compulsivity, our souls increasingly pant for meaning and value and truth as they wither away, exhausted, frazzled, displeased, ever on edge. Can anybody relate to that? The result is a hollow culture that, in the Apostle Paul's words, is ever learning but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth, and is increasingly so. People that used to study human nature as they would observe the Industrial Revolution and as they would observe the information revolution we find ourselves in, they predicted that on average by now, the average American would work about 6 or 8 hours a week because our technology would take care of everything else. Obviously, that hasn't happened. As our technology increases, as our connectedness with the world increases, as our ability to learn anything increases, as the amount of information that we have at our fingertips increases, we want just a little bit more. And we find ourselves working ourselves, in some cases, literally to death in order to have just a little bit more. And all the while, we pursue rest. We pursue peace. We say, once I get this, then I'll be able to rest. But that never happens. It always falls short. We live in this constant state of restlessness, pursuing rest. Because as someone once said, we're looking for rest in all the wrong places. So where do we find it? Where might we find this rest that goes beyond the physical and touches the depths of our souls, that includes the physical, but goes so much beyond it? Our souls find our rest in Jesus. What do I mean by that? The only source of peace in this world, the only source of wholeness, the only source of rest that pervades every aspect of our being is found in abiding with Christ. And I use that word abiding on purpose. We'll get there in just a moment. And this rest that Jesus offers us, sometimes, especially if you've grown up within the church, you've heard people say, well, this rest that Jesus gives us, it's for our souls. It's that we can always know that Jesus is in charge. And until we get there, we're going to work ourselves sick trying to do things for Jesus. That's not very resting to me. The rest that we find in Christ, it includes the physical. It includes rest for our bodies as much as it does rest for our spirits. As we go about the business of living out the heart of Christ, we want to know what that heart entails. You know, there's one place in the Gospels where Jesus describes his own heart. Just one place. And I want you to see it. If you have your Bibles, open them up. Let's look at Matthew chapter 11. The Gospel of Matthew is the first book in the New Testament. Matthew chapter 11. If you don't have your Bibles, don't worry. It'll be on the screen here in just a moment. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28. This passage that is quickly becoming one of my favorites. Matthew 11, verse 28. This is what it says. Jesus is speaking here. He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Amen to that, church. If that was all he said, that would be beautiful. Verse 29. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." How does Jesus describe his heart? He is gentle. He is humble. Some of your translations say lowly. Same idea. At his very core, Jesus is gentle and humble. And so as we live out our journey with Jesus, our walks with Jesus, our life with Jesus, they should reflect the fact that Jesus is gentle and humble. He's not high-strung. He's not anxious. He's not nervous. And most of all, Jesus is not hurried. Now, Jesus is busy, don't get me wrong. We're reading through Mark's gospel together. How many times does it say immediately Jesus went here and immediately he went there? And then as we read together last week, he went off with his disciples to rest, and what happened? A whole crowd came and swarmed him. Jesus knew what it was to have a full day, but his days were full of that which was of the utmost importance to God, and that's people. So often when our days are full, if we look back at them, the things that we spend our time doing, it just doesn't have that eternal weight that Jesus had when he walked. And then we wear ourselves out doing this, going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And so then we try to cope for our bodies. And what does that coping look like? Well, for some, it looks like playing video games for a few hours a night. For others, who tend to decry the video game players, it looks like watching news for a few hours a night. Same result. Let's be real for a second. We veg out on TV, we veg out on whatever, because we say, I need rest. And Jesus says, come to me, and I will give you rest. The way the Message puts this passage, Eugene Peterson, the Message paraphrase, I love it. Here it looks like this. Are you tired? Yes. Worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting upon you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Isn't that beautiful? The unforced rhythms of grace. How much of our life does it feel like is really unforced? And how much of it feels like I have to do this and I have to be here? We feel like we're forced into everything that we do. But with Jesus, he says, I will share with you the unforced rhythms of grace. Our rest is in Jesus. Our souls find rest in Jesus. They find wholeness and peace and satisfaction. The reason why that contemporary philosopher couldn't find satisfaction is because he didn't look for it in Jesus. That's the only place, church, the only place we can find it. And so if our souls find rest in Jesus, if Jesus is telling the truth here when he says, come to me and I will give you rest, what keeps us from experiencing that rest? Amen. Why is it that we follow Jesus maybe for days, weeks, months, years, and yet we're still looking for that rest? We say, well, Jesus said he'd give it to me, but where is it? What keeps us from experiencing that rest? There's many things. Today we're going to zoom in on one. I can only handle one thing at a time. And it's this: hurry keeps us from resting. One of the greatest threats to our spiritual lives today is hurrying. You see, when people step away from the faith, when they step away from following Jesus, from living out this life of Jesus, they don't step to atheism. They step to idolatry. They step to this idea that I tried this Jesus thing and it didn't work. Now I'm going to try something else. And they place their job, their career, whatever it is, in the place of God. And it becomes an idol to them. Hurry is one of our greatest threats to our spiritual lives. And it's really simple to understand why. Relationships, Jesus invites us into a relationship. Relationships require time. Parents, it's been said that kids spell love T-I-M-E. It's the same for marriages. It's the same for friendships. Relationships require time. If we don't put time in them, they will not be sustained, period. What's the one thing hurried people do not have? Time. It doesn't exist. Our relationship with God is the same way. It requires time spent with Him. Now, as many of you are aware, many of you have expressed condolences, and I appreciate that. My grandma passed away yesterday. She was 99 years old. Sweet, precious lady. We had her birthday a few weeks ago. When she was able to, she would come and sit, sometimes there, sometimes here. As I'm thinking about Grandma, one of the things that I'm thinking about, we used to spend most of our summer days with her. Mom and Dad worked, and so in the summer, during the day, they would take us to Grandma's house, and we'd stay there during the day. I cannot tell you how many games of pinochle and Uno and Skip-Bo we played with Grandma. Over and over and over and over again. And Grandma took it seriously. I'm just saying, I love you, Grandma. I'm just saying, she took it seriously. While we were doing that, later on in life even, we'd still be playing games, but we'd have all these conversations. We'd talk about life. We'd talk about politics. 9/11 happened when I was in school. We talked about that. We talked about all kinds of things. I don't really remember any of that. I remember sitting and playing these marathon sessions of Uno and Pinochle with Grandma, because Grandma took the time to invest in us. She would take us to parades. She would come to our games, baseball games and band concerts and whatever it was. Grandma took that time. And that's what I remember about her. Don't remember a single thing she cooked. She was a good cook. Don't remember her thoughts on any of that other stuff that I just mentioned. I remember the time that she showed us. Love happens when time happens. And if we are hurried, if our schedules are full to the brim, to overflowing, if we're struggling just to get through each day, and we get to the end of the day absolutely exhausted, we don't have time for relationships. Not with God and not with His people. That's one of our greatest threats to our spiritual life, is simply not having the time. Jesus puts it like this a little bit later on. He says, I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like such branches that are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. Anybody feel like that sometimes? If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory, that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. One of the most common mistakes we make when we read this is we say it brings God glory to bear much fruit, to do things for God, so I'm going to give myself completely to it. And then as I do things for God, I will grow in my relationship with Him. That's backwards. Jesus says, abide in me. Rest in me. Be centered in me. Find your fulfillment in me. And from there, you will bear much fruit. Something that I'm learning in my own walk with Christ is that at the fundamental level, our journey with Jesus is about being as opposed to doing. Now that was profound. I'm going to say it again. At a fundamental level, our walk with Jesus is about being, not doing. The doing is important. The outreach is important. But it has to come from a place of being with Jesus, of being centered on Jesus, of having our lives founded upon Jesus. Because when we're there, then we can be truly present in the moment. We can be aware of all that's going on around us. We can be aware of the needs around us, aware of the people around us, aware of what God is doing around us. But when we give ourselves to doing, and we neglect the being, we neglect the abiding, as we're in one thing, our thoughts are automatically on the next, and we're stuck on our to-do list over and over again. And then there's someone right next to us that's hurting, we don't see them because we're so focused on getting one thing done after another. Being with Jesus is the heart of the matter. When we skip that, when we're not with Jesus, we get burned out and beat up by this world. Resting in Jesus, to abide in Jesus, to rest in Jesus is so important to love. We don't love well unless we rest well. What do I mean by that? Have you ever found yourself truly rested, truly at peace with Jesus? Find yourself centered on Jesus. Find yourself fully aware and present in the moment. And then as you're driving down the road, yell and cuss at the guy that cut you off. That doesn't happen. Parents, when do you find yourself being short with your kids? Is it when you're rested and doing well and happy and satisfied in Jesus? Or is it when you're in the moment to where we got to go? I'm in a rush. I got to get here and you're going slow. Let's go. That's when we get frazzled. That's when we get upset with each other. My own family knows that when I'm rested, I tend to love better. That's when I'm a good dad, good husband. When I'm not rested, that's when my sweet, sweet girls ask me if I'm just grumpy right now. And I say, yes. Yes, I am. We rest well to love well. Our rest comes from abiding in Jesus. How do we rest? How do we get this experience? If hurry robs us of rest, how do we pursue rest? Well, there's a practice, and this is an ancient practice. It's not new, but it's probably new to many of us. In fact, this practice is interwoven within the very creation of the world itself, and the practice is known as the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a time set apart to rest and to worship. Now, today we're starting a new series called The Rhythms of Rest. We're taking a step and we're going to look over these next few weeks, next 7 weeks, at rest, at the Sabbath, at different practices we can do in our lives to be able to rest well. And so today is just kind of a preview and overview. So when I talk about the Sabbath, what is the Sabbath? Well, the Sabbath comes from a Hebrew word, Shabbat. Have you ever heard Shabbat before? Say that with me. Shabbat. There we go. We're all learning Hebrew together. And what Shabbat means is real simple. To stop. Well, stop what? Stop working. Stop wanting. To stop worrying. The Shabbat is the day that we take a step back and we say, Lord, you're God. You can have today. Today, I'm not going to fret. Today, I'm not going to worry because today is yours. It's been described like this, that a weekly Sabbath, a weekly Shabbat, it's like Christmas every week, minus all the family drama. And some of you are saying amen to that. Yeah, I got you. It's a day to step back, to be with loved ones, to rest and to worship. What we'll find out over these next few weeks is that God created this day on purpose. And it's very important, and we'll see that it is a radical call. The Sabbath, the call to take a day, to step back, is absolutely crazy, both for our culture and for culture since the beginning of time. Today we hear the push to go, 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 to be motivated to work 24/7, because that's where we find results. And in that, God says, how about 24/6? Give me one day. Now, how do we do Sabbath? We're going to talk more about that as we go. The brief version is this. There's basically three big kinds of Sabbath. There's the Sabbath that the Hebrews practiced of old, which would typically go from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday. That's the Sabbath that works well for me, for example, for our family, because the more traditional Sabbath that we experience a second time is to take Sunday and to give Sunday to God. We're already at church. It's a time of worship. It's a time for rest. Others, depends on your work schedule. Some folks work all day on the weekends or every other weekend or whatever. Is to take a day during the week, a Wednesday, Thursday, pick something. But the important part is to take a day and to say, Lord, this day is yours. Now, when I talk about Sabbath, what do you think is the most common objection people give to living out the Sabbath? I don't have time for that. That's the point. When we Sabbath well, when we rest well in Jesus, we don't live one day differently, we live all 7 days differently. The Hebrews of old would say that the day before, so Thursday, is the day of preparation. We have to prepare for a Sabbath. It's a discipline to be able to rest. It's a discipline to observe the Sabbath. Now, let me say this up front too. When Jesus invites us into this rest, when he invites us to honor, to remember the Sabbath, it is just that, an invitation. It is not a command. It is not a command. God says either you observe the Sabbath or else. That doesn't happen. God says, do you want to rest? Do you want to find wholeness and peace for your body? Come to the Sabbath. Meet me there, and we'll find it together. So the Sabbath is an invitation. Second thing to remember, when we practice anything new, for many of you all, the idea of Sabbath might be a new call. What tends to happen is that educators call it the J curve on learning, is that when we start doing something, we're here, and then when we try to do something new, we don't get better, we actually get worse. We get worse for a time, and we get anxious over that, and we wonder, what am I doing wrong, or this thing might not actually work. The trick is to keep going, to keep being motivated during that, because then over time, that's when the growth comes. When we first started to try to incorporate the Sabbath into our lives, it gets hairy quick. And we as a family, we're on this journey. I am by no means in the position of saying, hey, we've got it figured out, let me show you how to do it. It's a position of saying, we're on this journey too, and we want to invite you to come along. We're trying to figure it out together. Something that we're doing as a part of that, and I cannot recommend this enough to you, is here's a book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, by John Mark Comer. Now, I was turned on to this by John Johnson, one of our pastors here at church, and I'll admit to you, my prejudices got the best of me at the beginning because he was telling me about a year ago all about this book, all about John Mark Comer. I'd never heard of the guy, and I said, well, where is he? And he said, oh, well, he's a pastor out in Portland. And I'm thinking, Portland? Yeah. I got issues, and I admit it. So I am in need of Jesus in a great way. This is something I recommend for just about every follower of Christ to read, because here he dives deep into this idea of finding rest. How do we live out rest in the midst of a chaotic world? I don't have time to rest. I don't have time to Sabbath. How do I do that? He addresses a lot of those questions. If I'm mentioning Sabbath, and if your first response is, I don't have time for that, Comer helps out a lot. Very, very, very good. What we're going to do here at the church, starting not this Wednesday, but the next Wednesday, the 15th, is we are starting a book study that I'll be leading, where we're going to walk through this together. It's for 6 weeks. Okay, we can commit to 6 weeks. 6 weeks, sign up, come and be with us. We'll meet every Wednesday except one. We're on the week of the 22nd. We're actually going to meet on Thursday the 23rd because the 22nd is my wife's birthday. And if I schedule things on that day, I'll be under arrest. All right. With the exception of that, every Wednesday. And if you need to be on Zoom, especially for our online group, let me know. We can make that work. Sign up for this. You do not want to miss that. We will walk through practices together on how to experience rest in our lives. And at the church, we've picked up a few copies of this book. If you want to pick up your own, look on Amazon, look anywhere they're there. Or if you need, we can definitely give you one of ours. That's not a big deal at all. Just sign up and let me know. But the point of today that I want us to get deep down is that the longing of our souls, the desire of our souls to be satisfied, to find wholeness and completeness, to be able to answer that question. Sometimes we wonder, am I missing it? Does it matter, the things that I do? Does my life even matter? Those answers are found in Jesus. Our souls, our bodies find rest in Jesus. Worship band, come back up here. One of the things that we're going to see, and we're going to step into it right now, is this. The Sabbath, it's not created as a time to lay back and sleep all day. Sleeping's important. There's great spiritual power in a nap, I'm just saying. It's a time to rest. It's a time to worship. It's a time to reflect on the blessings of God so that we might go and bless others. That is what the Sabbath is that Jesus calls us into. And he says, if you want to find rest, if you want to find peace, come to me. All who are weary or heavy burdened. Do you feel burdened today, church? Bring that to Jesus. He says, I will give you rest, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. He says, take my yoke upon you. There is a yoke of following Jesus. There is a burden, but it is light. It fits who we are. It's unforced. Unforced rhythms of grace. The burden of Jesus is to be fully aware and fully present in the moment that we find ourselves in so that we can see the great things that God is doing. It is to pursue relationship with God and with his people, with those that he has placed around us. And relationships, they require time. We need time to pursue our spiritual lives, to pursue our spiritual formation.